Motion for debate. Housing supply and homelessness. Baroness Warwick of Omitted.
My Lords, I welcome this opportunity to highlight again the current housing crisis and the rise in homelessness, and I'm grateful to all noble lords who've chosen to speak in this debate. The Church of England has produced two important reports re-emphasising the crisis we face, and I'm glad that the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, has chosen this debate to make his valedictory speech to the House. He instigated the two reports and has shown a strong commitment to ending homelessness, and I know that the House will appreciate his many valuable contributions over the years and look forward to his valedictory address.
My Lords, I'm grateful to the noble Lady Baroness Warwick for sponsoring this debate and for introducing it in such a compelling and moving way. And like her, I also look forward to the valedictory speech from the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury. And I pay tribute to the work of the Church under his leadership in raising the profile of housing and identifying some solutions, and in particular the work of his Commission on Housing, Coming Home, which was published in 2019. And I'm sure he'll want to develop some of those themes in his speech today.
My Lords, there have been many reports on the housing crisis and how to address it. Reports by Shelter, Crisis, the National Housing Federation and the Affordable Housing Commission, chaired by the noble Lord Best, with the Smith Institute and the Nationwide Foundation. And, of course, the Church of England report, Homes for All, published earlier this year, which rightly talked of our moral duty to ensure that all households have access to affordable, safe and quality homes, and I agree. And so it is appropriate that the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, has chosen this debate to make his valedictory speech.
I'm also looking forward to hearing from the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who has been a consistent champion on behalf of the homeless and the badly housed.
My Lords, it is often said, and it is a cliche to say it, but hey, I'm the Archbishop still, that if you want to make God laugh, make plans. Well, on that basis, next year I will be causing God more hilarity than anyone else for many years, because the plans for next year were very detailed and extensive. If you pity anyone, pity my poor diary secretary, who's seen weeks and months of work disappear in a puff of a resignation announcement. The reality, which I wish to start with and then pay some thanks and then talk about housing. The reality is that there comes a time, if you are technically leading a particular institution or area of responsibility, where the shame of what has gone wrong, whether one is personally responsible or not, must require a head to roll. And there is only, in this case, one head that rolls well enough. I hope not literally. One of my predecessors in 1371, Simon of Sudbury, had his head cut off, and it was then the peasants, the revolting peasants at the time, played football with it at the Tower of London. I don't know who won. But it certainly wasn't Simon of Sudbury. The reality is that the safeguarding and care of children and vulnerable adults in the Church of England today is thanks to thousands and tens of thousands of people across the church, particularly in parishes, in parish safeguarding officers, is a completely different picture to the past. And however, when I look back at the last 50 or 60 years, not only through the eyes of the Making report, however one takes one's view of personal responsibility, it is clear that I had to stand down, and it is for that reason that I do so. Secondly, I want to say thank you to so many people in the House. This 12 years, I cannot think of a single moment where I've come in here where the hair on the back of my neck has not stood up at the privilege of being allowed to sit on these benches. It has been an extraordinary period, and I've listened to so many debates of great wisdom, so many amendments of bills that have improved them, so much hard work. And I've also found that despite the fact I still can't find my way around this building, that the staff here are endlessly patient as I look panic-struck when I suddenly find I'm standing on a green carpet and not a red one, and have guided me to the right place. I am hugely grateful, and I'm very grateful to noble lords who've been kind enough to send supportive and encouraging notes over the last few weeks. It has been a great privilege and strength to have that. Housing, as has been said, is one of the key areas of life in any society. When I look back historically, there are, and I won't develop the whole history, but whenever this nation has taken a huge step forward since the end of the Napoleonic Wars, three things have played a part: housing, education, and health. Housing, education, and health. And where they have changed, they've laid a new basis for a healthy society, not just physically, but in every way. And I believe that is what we're called to do now. There's been much reference to the two reports the Church of England has issued, and I am in the same place as much of what I was going to say has been said. So I will say it, I won't say it again, I will say something slightly different, but very briefly. The Coming Home report that noble Lord Young referred to so kindly sets out 5 words beginning with S, which it decided, it recommended as the moral centre of good housing. That housing should be safe. We've heard and we know about the need for that through Grenfell, through mould, and the need to improve the safety of housing. That housing should be secure so that people know that they can bring up families. That housing should be stable. People shouldn't constantly be forced to move without choice. It is utterly disruptive. And that housing should be sustainable. That it should be zero carbon. We cannot afford to build tens of thousands of houses which increase the problems of climate change. But I want to add 2 things. First of all, housing must be affordable, particularly social housing. Social housing is one of the areas which is very inelastic in terms of supply and demand. We need clear criteria for what affordable means. One of them has to be in proportion not to the average cost in the area, which is the present test, 80% of average costs. Well, I can assure you, as we come to the end of our time where we're living at the moment and start looking for a house to buy, 80% of average market costs puts us a very long way away from where we'd like to be. And that serves us right in some ways. But it needs to, the affordable housing needs to be related to income, not to average cost. It needs to be measured against real living wage in a particular area if it is going to be genuinely affordable. And secondly, it's no use building houses unless you build communities. Housing without community sets us up for the social problems of the future, perfectly. So when we build houses, we have to create the open spaces. And I've got 1 S, which is satisfying. It has to be a place where children can play, where families get to know each other. I would say, obviously enough, that where there's a church, or at least a community centre that acts as a church, where people are brought together. Community facilities in most of our new developments are nugatory, nil, useless. We have to do better. A last comment. The Church Commissioners for England hold about 5,000 to 6,000 acres of strategic land out of their total 100 to 200,000, well, 100,000 acres of church commissioners' total land holdings, and another 100,000 in the hands of dioceses and parishes and trusts and so on. I know that they are now working on plans for working with government and local authorities using the mapping tool developed in the Coming Home report to see the best places to get together with others and have economically helpful and areas with good return. Look at what the Duchy of Cornwall has done with that. How you can look down a street and see, you can't distinguish which is social housing and which is non-subsidised housing. That also is part of the way in which we treat people with respect. I hope that the government, and I look forward to hearing from Noble Baroness the Minister, I hope the government will undertake to work right across the sector of landholders so there may be good mixed development that brings people together and sets us up for a better future. And that as part of that, it is done in the building deliberately of communities before you talk about individual houses. My Lords, I am hugely grateful to have been here. You remain in my prayers and in my deep affection and profound respect for the huge contribution made by this House to our nation, which it usually does not recognise. And I'm hugely grateful to Baroness Taylor for allowing this debate to happen.
My Lords, it's a privilege, it's a real privilege to have an opportunity to follow the Most Reverend Primate. We first met in Durham Cathedral, and on that occasion it was a great civic occasion where I was the appointed preacher and he was the recently arrived, merely at that time, Right Reverend Prelate. And I preached at him, and he's blessed me, and it's been like that ever since. A month or two later, in May 2012, the Most Reverend Primate made his maiden speech in this house. And on that occasion, he was still the Bishop of Durham, and he toured the heights of his experience, drew massively on his secular experience as well as his religious experience. He has played a large part in the banking and financial sector themes that we've pursued in this and House and in Parliament generally. And indeed, he is a towering figure in many other ways. After all, he has officiated at the funeral of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, and crowned the brand new King and Queen in his turn. And he has been a great campaigner for women's consecration to the episcopacy, and has seen that happen, and we just cannot divorce him from the achievement of that great step, which has greatly enriched this House. And ethical investment, which crosses between morality and ethics on the one hand and finance performance on the other, is another of his great themes. But in a sense, I could pursue a tour d'horizon of the great themes that he has taken some part in, but it wouldn't really get to where I want to be. In his maiden speech, as well as proclaiming the virtues and the qualities of the Northeast, and we remember that Newcastle drew last evening with Manchester City, very good thing. He also championed another issue, which was loan sharks and people with payday loans at extortionate interest, and they were gone within 2 or 3 years after he struck that note. And from then until now, where he chooses for his valedictory address to speak on housing and homelessness, that's the theme that runs for me right through this particular primate's life and witness, like the word Blackpool through a stick of seaside rock. And somewhere along the way, he has espoused the marginalized, the oppressed, the poor people of the land, and internationally too. He has traveled to every province of the Anglican Communion, and we can only honor him for his stamina as far as that is concerned. Stamina to get there, but holding it together is an entirely different challenge. Somewhere on that parabola, he quoted a line from Nelson Mandela, which I think is the hallmark for his particular ministry. And he said, "Poverty," Mandela, quoted by the primate, "poverty is a matter of justice, not charity." And that is a pretty high bar to set. And so I honor him for his work. I'm reading a book at the moment. It's an enlightening book. I'm enjoying it. It traces the history of John Milton's Paradise Lost through its various iterations and usefulness around the world. And it is really, truly an insightful book. But it is called What in Me is Dark. There isn't a member of this house, not one noble lord or lady, who has not had to face the dark at some stage in their lives. And we can only feel with the Right Reverend Primate now as he gazes into his, none of us feeling superior as we do so. But also, it's a good thing to follow John Milton's quotation to its end. What in me is dark, illumine. What low, raise and support, that to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to man. That's nobler than the cut-off title of the book that I'm reading at the moment. One last word, if I may. I have some indulgence on these matters, on these occasions. It's very dangerous to give such an indulgence to a Welshman, but I'll do my best. And it allows me to give vent to a long-nurtured secret of mine, a secret desire of mine, which is to quote some Latin as an alumnus of Llanelli Boys Grammar School to an old Etonian. From the Aeneid, Aeneas is looking in Carthage at a mural showing Juno at the fall of Troy and all of Aeneas' friends who died in Troy. And he weeps to see them fallen. Sunt lacrimae rerum, et mentem mortalia tangunt. There are tears at the heart of things, and the mind is affected by ideas of our mortality. There are tears at the heart of things. I'd guess that the noble primate knows that as well as anybody. But there can be tears of joy, and we must hope that the future, that the Right Reverend, he's not the Right Reverend, I just demoted him, that the Most Reverend Primate will enjoy, with Caroline and the family, will be full of joy. The joy will invade the darkness and dispel it, so that the man we know will have a chance to be himself again, breathe his own air, and stand in his own dignity. Justin, I'm going to miss you. and I think we're going to miss your family too. God bless you. And so to the business of the day.
And I'd also like to thank the Noble Primate for his very, very powerful speech. His words will be missed much in this House.
It's a pleasure to follow Baroness Bennett of Manor Castle, and also to have been here for the valedictory speech of the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and to hear his brilliant description of why housing is so important to society. It was also a pleasure to hear the tribute from Lord Griffiths of Curry Port. I'm a newbie to this house, but I can absolutely see, having heard the Most Reverend Primate's speech, how much his contributions are going to be missed.
Face, and also the Most Reverend Primate, Archbishop of Canterbury, for his great work that he has done, particularly in this area, and I really appreciated his speech.
And of course I want to offer my thanks to the Noble Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, for his valedictory speech. During his tenure, he's been a champion of housing, and we've already referred to the report Coming Home, pertinent both to today's debate, but of course is relevant to His Majesty's government and for their very good, ambitious targets to build more housing, and I hope we can assist the government in achieving that.
Can I say of the Right Reverend Primate that whenever I've heard him speak in this House, he's done so with passion, with conviction and with authority on some of the great social inequalities and issues of our day, and he will be missed.
My Lords, I would like to begin by acknowledging the very personal valedictory speech of the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury. His wise but often challenging contributions will be missed.
It is also an honour and a privilege to be closing after the valedictory speech from the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury. The fact that he chose this debate to be his last tells us a great deal about his values and his care for those in need. I believe I speak for these benches and the whole House when I say we wish him well for the future.
It's been a great privilege to listen to the debate today, and it's a great privilege to respond to a debate in which the Most Reverend Primate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, gave his valedictory speech. The Archbishop was present at one of the most terrifying experiences I've had since I joined this House. He's been a great champion of housing, and he, as many noble peers have said, and he introduced the report, Homes for All, as a very good launch in your Lordship's House. I arrived at that, which I thought I was just going to attend, to find Lady Warwick asking me if I would speak. And as I walked into the room, the Archbishop was already speaking. I had to very quickly gather my thoughts together and make a speech there and then. But the Archbishop has done such fantastic work. His deep and thorough knowledge of the banking system from his earlier career enabled him in 2013 to speak out powerfully against payday lending, which was a great passion of mine as well, and he launched a campaign in favour of credit unions as an alternative. The annual Archbishop's debate under his watchful eye has seen him raise the following areas: banking standards, soft power, reconciliation, education, British values, housing, freedom of speech, migration and families. And his book, Reimagining Britain, published in 2018, set out his thoughts on areas for specific social change and reform, including on social care, housing and families, issues on which he and the Archbishop of York founded policy commissions. He also has an extensive knowledge of overseas issues through his travel around the country and his countries, and he's made informed contributions on debates on foreign policy, including on Sudan, Afghanistan, and Israel and Gaza. And of course, in the 12 years in which the Most Reverend Primate has been the Archbishop of Canterbury, he's offered spiritual counsel to 6 Prime Ministers and overseen many significant royal events, presiding at the coronation of His Majesty King Charles III and delivering the sermon at the funeral of the late Queen Elizabeth II. He's also baptised Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, and married Prince Harry and Princess Meghan at Windsor in 2018. On housing, during his great speech this afternoon, the Most Reverend Primate spoke about affordability. I'll come to that later. He spoke about community and building places for people, a topic which is very close to my heart in terms of planning. And I do want to thank him for the way that he has steered the church commissioners, if you can steer church commissioners, no, I thought that was probably the case, because I do believe that there are extraordinary opportunities now in terms of church land, and the government welcomes the opportunity to have that dialogue with the church commissioners. So there is no doubt in my mind that in my parish, as elsewhere in the church, safeguarding is infinitely better than it was before his time as an archbishop. So while we understand his very honourable reasons for resignation, I know that this house and the church will miss him greatly. I can do no better than to quote his own words back to him. People of loving service are rare in any walk of life. Leaders of loving service still rarer. But in all cases, those who serve will be loved and remembered when those who cling to power and privileges will be forgotten. Thank you.